All right, let's dive in. Today, we are going way back in time. And I mean, we're not just talking a few centuries here. We're talking about jumping into a whole parallel universe, one that was dreamed up by one of the most surprising, most innovative minds in all of literature.
Think about that for a second. What if the very first science fiction story wasn't about starships or aliens, but was written way back in 1666 by a woman? I mean, we're talking long before H.G. Wells, before Jules Verne. Someone was writing about parallel worlds, strange creatures, and scientific discovery. And no, not in the 1900s, not even the 1800s. We're going all the way back to 1666.
So who was this person? Well, the author behind this incredible book is Margaret Cavendish. And really, to get this book, you first have to get her. We're talking about a mind that was aristocratic, deeply scientific, and just completely refused to play by the rules of her time.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at why this was a world before its time. Then we'll get into the mind of Margaret Cavendish. After that, we'll take a trip inside the blazing world, unpack its radical blueprint, and finally we'll talk about why this story still matters even today.
All right, let's jump right into part one, a world before its time, because we really need to unpack just how modern this book was for the era it was written in.
Okay, so picture this. The year is 1666. England is a mess, still recovering from a brutal civil war. What we think of as science is just getting started, with places like the Royal Society causing all sorts of heated debates. And right in the middle of all that chaos, Cavendish drops this book that imagines a world of perfect order, rational thought, and just wild possibilities.
You know, Cavendish just wasn't interested in being put in a box. People ask, was the blazing world a utopia? Well, yeah, it had this ideal society. Was it science fiction? For sure, it's full of fantastical creatures and scientific debate. Does it feel like a fairy tale? Oh, absolutely. See, she didn't follow the rules of any one genre. She just made up her own.
So that begs the question, right? Who was this woman who dared to write a book like this? Well, in our next section, we're going to do just that, explore the mind of Margaret Cavendish.
Margaret Cavendish was, honestly, such a fascinating character. On the one hand, she was an aristocrat, so she had access to an education that most women could only dream of back then. But she didn't just sit on it. Nope. She was a prolific writer in an age where women were torn down just for publishing their work. She dove right into the new science of her day, debating ideas about the microscope and coming up with her own theories on atoms. She was a total intellectual powerhouse, and her imagination was just completely off the charts.
All right, now for the really fun part. Let's head inside the blazing world. We're leaving 17th century England behind and taking a trip to the parallel universe Cavendish created. So how do you get there? Well, the entrance is through the North Pole. And the very first thing you'd notice is the light. Everything, the stones, the buildings, the sky itself, it all seems to shine with this inner glow. It's this brilliant, radiant place that gives the world its name, the blazing world.
And this world is anything but chaotic. Actually, it's the total opposite. It's a super-organized society made up of these animal-human hybrids, and every single one has a very specific job. The bear men, they're your scientists and philosophers. The fishmen, they explore the oceans. Birdmen handle communications, and the foxmen are the politicians. It's like Cavendish designed this perfectly rational, harmonious society where there's no conflict because everyone knows exactly what their role is.
And that brings us to a really crucial point. This fantastical world wasn't just some fun escape. It was a direct critique of the real world she was living in.
I mean, just look at the contrast. On one side, you've got her reality in 17th century England. Total political chaos, a society completely run by men, and a whole lot of scientific confusion. And on the other side, you have her solution in the blazing world. Perfect orderly government, a female empress with absolute power, and a society driven by logic and reason. Now, this is what we'd call a utopia, right? An imagined, perfect place. But Cavendish isn't just daydreaming here. She's using this idea of a perfect world, one that's free from all the chaos she saw around her, as a really sharp tool for social and political commentary. And this is where we get to the most radical, most groundbreaking idea in the whole book. The main character, a woman from our world, doesn't just get to visit this utopia. They make her its absolute empress. This was Cavendish's way of shouting from the rooftops that women were just as capable of leadership in every field, science, politics, you name it. Just stop and think about how revolutionary that was for a moment. She takes the entire social structure of her time, which was totally patriarchal, and just flips it completely upside down. She puts a woman in charge of everything, governing, leading scientific discoveries, even commanding armies. It's exactly why this book is seen today as such a foundational piece of feminist literature.
Okay, so let's bring this all home in our final section and talk about why this story, written over 350 years ago, still matters so much today.
So what's the takeaway? What's its legacy? Well, for starters, it's considered one of the very first science fiction novels ever. It pioneered the whole idea of a parallel universe, which is now, a huge part of the genre. It brilliantly mixed real scientific ideas with pure, wild fantasy. And maybe most importantly, it was a massive achievement for a woman in a literary world that was almost completely run by men. When you boil it all down, The Blazing World is so much more than just a quirky little fantasy story. It's this powerful statement about how imagination can be used as a tool, not just to escape the world, but to take a hard look at it, to critique it, and to dream up how it could actually be better. And that really leaves us with one final thought, something for you to chew on. Cavendish used her imagination to push back against the scientific, political, and social limits of her world. So the question for us is, how can we use our imagination to challenge the limits of our own?